Today, and by popular demand, we are taking a closer look at AATU. What a weird name, if you ask me, AATU. Now, AATU is owned by Inspired Pet Nutrition in Thirsk, just around the corner from where I am actually, and they are owners of Harrington's, Barking Heads, Wag and AATU, which is the brand in question today. Now, AATU is one of the so-called 80-20 dog kibbles here in the UK, and something that a lot of people do put a lot of emphasis on whenever we talk about dog food. Now, 80-20 pertains to any dry dog food that might include 20% animal protein, 20% protein coming from animal sources and 20% botanicals. And these foods tend to be a bit on the better side on the kibble market. We have companies, a lot of companies actually, put in a lot of grains, 40, 50, 60, 70% rice, wheat, barley, corn and soya and sugar and things like meat and animal derivatives. And there are other dry dog foods such as the 80-20s, and they tend to try to put better ingredients in their dog food. And so we are going to take a look at AATU and tell you whether this is good, bad or meh. The first one I am going to take a look at is the salmon, and this is a 10 kilo bag, and this will set you back about £100 depending where you get it. Now, the composition is pretty good. We have 80% salmon, even though they don't really specify where the salmon is coming from, but salmon nevertheless, 80% is a wonderful thing to see. 80% is pretty much as high as you can get it. Then we have sweet potato, which is a low glycemic carbohydrate. If you are going to see any carbohydrates whatsoever in your dog food, a bit of sweet potato will be probably your best choice or one of your best choices. Then we have chickpeas, peas, lucerne, salmon stock, carrots, tomato and apples, pears and that sort of thing. So not that much in terms of variety. Salmon, as it says on the tin or the bag of food, salmon is salmon, and that's what you are getting. Salmon, sweet potato, chickpeas, salmon stock and carrots. So yeah, not bad. We then move on to the 80-20 free range chicken, and this is again 10 kilos, and these will set you back about £90 here in the UK. Now, the composition, again, we have 80% chicken, and they do break down here the 50% chicken, 30% dehydrated chicken, and then we get into the sweet potato, chickpeas, peas, lucerne, chicken stock, salmon oil, carrots, tomato, etc, etc. So we have a high proportion of chicken, and then they bind it all together with sweet potato, peas, chickpeas, etc, etc. What do we think about this? High proportion of meat, low carbohydrates, low glycemic carbohydrates such as sweet potato and a few legumes. It's a bit sort of not cool that they don't really tell you the percentages after the chicken. We don't know what percentage is sweet potato, we don't know what percentage is chickpeas, we don't really know what percentage is chicken stock. All we know is that they put sweet potato and chicken stock. The third recipe we are going to talk about is the free range duck, and this will again set you back about £100 for 10 kilos of dog food. Composition 80% duck. We love seeing 80% duck, and the first ingredient being an animal protein and something which is quite lovely such as duck. And then we get 51% duck within the 80%, 29% dehydrated duck. I would imagine that whenever they put 51% duck, this is either freshly prepared duck or raw duck, maybe freshly prepared duck, fresh duck, and then 29% dehydrated duck. If you look at things that go into a blender, they can either be dehydrated, they can be either frozen raw, they might have been preserved before they go into the blender. So that's something we don't really know what the entire composition is of the duck, or the provenance, the exact provenance of the duck. But nevertheless, we then go into your sweet potato, chickpeas, peas, salmon oil, duck stock, carrots, tomato, etc, etc. So in the 3 recipes, all they change is the protein. The botanicals, the carbohydrates, the fillers, the chickpeas, the sweet potatoes, the tomatoes and the carrots, those do not change. The only thing that changes is the protein. So they change the protein, and then they keep everything pretty straightforward, and they do not tinker with the ingredients too much. And this is something I do like about manufacturers, that they do not come up and reinvent new foods and new ingredients, new recipes, and that you can rely on a particular brand to give you what you are paying for. And so if we see here that the composition is always going to be the same apart from the meat you choose, that in theory will enable you to know what you are giving your dog. So if you go from the duck recipe to the salmon recipe and your dog has an allergic reaction to salmon, then you will be able to identify that the salmon is the common allergen and not anything else within the ingredients list. If all they do is keep the same ingredients intact and change protein source, then it's a lot easier to identify what we are giving the dog. And so this is something I really do enjoy. Now, what do we think about AATU? AATU is very expensive. There's no two ways about it. Good food is pretty unaffordable these days, and you are paying for quality. The bags of AATU come vacuum sealed and vacuum packed, and the bag looks pretty good. It's a pretty good food. We are not affiliated with AATU in any shape or form. We are free to say whatever we want, and so AATU is one of those kibbles that sits on the upper echelon of dog foods. For this price, and being completely honest, if you are looking at an 80-20 and to potentially feed your dog the very best that dog kibble can buy, or the money can buy in terms of dog kibble rather, what you would want to see maybe would be a lot more organ meats and a bit more variety in terms of specificity in what's going on in your dog's diet. So if they claim to be an 80-20, maybe within the 80%, we could see some liver, maybe we could see some organ meat. And if they already do that, because we don't know from the ingredients list, it would be very good for them to specify and for them to be specific in what they are giving us, because it is a premium product. It commands a very high price, and even though the proportion of meat that goes into the blender, into the mix, is very high, and it's ethical and free run and all these buzzwords, it's a very good food, but it comes at a price. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a very good food. This is an actual really good food, not a wannabe dog food that says everything on the front of the dog food, and then you get rubbish and a lot of filler inside the food. AATU is a very good food. Is it independently owned? Yes, it is independently owned. How long is it going to stay independent? We do not know, and that cannot be really forecast. So what do we think about AATU? Very good food, very expensive. This is one of the foods that you could potentially give your dog and just forget about everything else that anyone else says. If you want to stick to a very high kibble, could you do better? Yes. Could you do it cheaper? Yes. would you be as bothered? Maybe no. And if that's the case, R2 would be a perfect sort of dog food for you to feed your dog forever, and your dog might actually be very, very happy because, as we said, the ingredients, which is the most important thing in dog food, the ingredients are wonderful. All you have to do is turn that bag of food over and you will see wonderful ingredients. And if you want to know more about dog nutrition and what's really, really good for your dog, you should watch this video next.